only fair to start with Justin's team. Of course, Porygon Z, not the usual Porygon. Most people leaving it at that Porygon 2, not fully evolving it and giving it the Eviolite. Definitely something we haven't seen so often recently, so be interested to see if that's a move. We have seen it particularly on the online ladder, picking up use with Z conversion. So it manages to change its type, and with the boost from the Z move, actually manages to get a completely big stat boost, one in every single stat that it needs. So it gets a new type, it gets stats, and now it just needs to be able to set up and capitalize. So I think a lot of Justin's team is going to be around setting up for that, the assistance of Weavile, the assistance of Parasect, which I did talk about a little bit earlier. Could be interested to see if it's as good as I think it is. Of course, though, Caleb playing something a little more standard. He's using the Porygon too, maybe looking to get up that Trick Room.
Yeah, honestly, it looks very familiar to what Inosh was running, I believe, in San Jose with that Tapu Fini, with the Araquanid, with that Porygon 2. It just feels a lot like the team that he brought. I'm not sure if Caleb has taken this opportunity, though, to sort of add his spin on it. We'll just have to see how this match plays out as these trainers get started. So good luck to both Caleb and Justin. Again, for those of you just tuning in, this is round 4 of Swiss here in the Dallas 2017 Regional Championships. I cannot wait to see this match begin.
No, I think the leads are going to be really important for both these players here.
Nice.
Justin going right away, showing off that Porygon Z and the Weavile, so Weavile able to provide some support. But Caleb answering very smartly with the Tapu Fini and the Crocodile. So Justin knows what he wants to do. Going to have to be smart about doing it, though. And I think Caleb's answers on the field are going to give him a little more trouble than he'd like for trying to set up this Z conversion.
Yeah, Crocodile, I think, is one of those Pokemon that's sort of been examined in this metagame, but not really. It does get access to Intimidate. It is a ground-type Pokemon, which does very well against Pokemon such as Muck, but we'll see if it does anything this turn. It doesn't look like it. Fake out from that Weavile into the Crocodile, and there it is. I believe we're going to see that Z conversion from that Porygon Z.
So it does get the choice of what it wants to turn into. Of course, it's based on where the move slots are placed. So the typing it picks up here could be really, really important. If it's something useful, then it's going to be good. It takes the electric type, likely from that Thunderbolt, but it's not going to be able to capitalize as we see a substitute come out from Tapu Fini. So not a bad turn for both players, I think.
Yeah, it looks like Caleb may be familiar with some of Porygon Z's antics and look to set up that substitute to buy him a turn to possibly attack with a ground-type move from that Crocodile here. So it's all going to come down to whether or not Weavile has a way to possibly stop that Crocodile before it can attack. You know, Weavile is an Ice-type Pokemon. It could get access to, like, Icicle Crash, perhaps, or maybe some sort of other Ice-type move.
There's definitely pretty much specific spreads on the Weavile that allow it to flinch things with more than just fake out. So even if it is trying that, it's not going to be this turn for the Crocodile. And Porygon not capitalizing off its type change, unfortunately.
Ice Beam into the Crocodile, who protects, and then we see the Icicle Crash, but that connects with the Tapu Fini and not that Crocodile. So whether or not it'll break the substitute is to be seen. It does get a critical hit, and that substitute does fade. So an unfortunate turn for Caleb, but he does still have the option to set up a Calm Mind with that Tapu Fini. So if that Porygon Z is looking to attack it in the future, Tapu Fini's new bulk will sort of help lessen the blow.
It's going to be really good, and both players setting up a little bit of what they want. So this game a little slower than some of the games we've seen today. Caleb obviously getting a nice Calm Mind up to help with that Z conversion boosted electric type Porygon now. But he's still got a lot to deal with on just inside the field. A lot of pressure coming down. Porygon 2 just going for it another way, though.
We see Ice Beam into the Marowak, actually, coming in for the Crocodile. And we see a fling onto the Tapu Fini. What was that Weavile holding? It's activating, and it flinched, which means that Weavile is holding the King's Rock item to prevent that Tapu Fini from doing anything this turn.
I think this just shows how Justin's team is designed to work. Of course, set up with the Porygon on turn 1, get your stats nice and boosted, and then you'll be in a good position. We use Weavile to slow it down. Icicle Crash with the King's Rock, increasing chance to flinch. Of course, Fling King's Rock guaranteeing a flinch, but a perfect switch from Caleb here brings in that Alolan Marowak, and that means that the Thunderbolt is going to be redirected by Lightning Bolt, basically forcing Justin to use Ice Beam and not get any benefit from it.
Justin double targeting that Marowak while Tapu Fini uses this opportunity to put up a substitute. That Marowak used Protect, so it did not take any damage this turn.
A perfect Protect from Caleb there, knowing, of course, that Justin now has to switch his focus focus. It looks like he wants to get rid of the Tapu Fini, but he can't do that with electric-type attacks while Alolan Marowak is on the field. So switches the focus to that, and a perfect protect from Caleb. Manages to block all of the damage coming in that turn. So Caleb, although there was a lot of setup on just inside the field that he wanted, I think he's just managed to switch around and get all the things he needs himself as well. So very, very good positioning, I think, from Caleb under a lot of pressure.
That Alolan Marowak switching out, Crocodile coming in its place. It does get an Intimidate off on Weavile and that Porygon Z, but unfortunately gets knocked out by a critical hit from a Ice Beam. Weavile's Assurance is redirected towards the Tapu Fini. Whether or not it's able to knock out is to be seen. We do see the substitute remain, and we see Tapu Fini use a second Calm Mind to boost its special defense and special attack even further.
That Tapu Fini is becoming a real problem. Of course, Justin getting a nice Pokemon advantage by knocking out that Crocodile. I think that was something that was putting pressure on him, especially since Porygon Z took that electric type. Getting rid of that on the switch is really good for him, but still, the Alolan Marowak from Caleb, the Calm Mind and the substitute setup on his Tapu Fini, I mean, he's still in a really good position, even though he's a Pokemon down. So I feel like the Weavile has used all its tricks, and it may need to switch out to come back in and at least bring pressure with Fake Out again. If Justin leaves it in and wants it to get knocked out by Caleb, then he's going to be in for a bit of a rough time. Caleb may just leave it on the field because he's not at all worried about it.
We see Weavile switch out and Politoed come in out on the field in its place, bringing its Drizzle ability with it, which will set up some nice little raindrops on the field and weaken Marowak's fire-type attacks, but we won't see any attacks from Marowak this turn. We see it protect once again. Ice Beam going into the Tapu Fini this time around. Will it be enough to break that substitute? It's not very effective, and Tapu Fini remains out on the field, firing back a Moonblast of its own into that Porygon Z, and despite the fact that it has boosted its special attack 2 times, it is still not enough to knock it out.
No, the 2 stages of special attack boost from Tapu Fini going up against the special defense boost from Porygon Z. I mean, Porygon Z hanging around, not quite as well as its younger brother Porygon 2 would, but still in a really good position. Unfortunately though, Caleb just has that board position with the Alolan Marowak on the field. It's now up to Justin, who's got a good switch in with the Politoed there, pretty much predicting the Marowak coming in and setting himself up to put pressure on it. So Marowak now forced out, and if Justin's able to capitalize, this could be a huge turn for him.
Caleb sending in a Porygon of his own this turn, only this time it is a Porygon 2, gets the attack boost from its download ability. Porygon Z using Protect this turn, not wanting to be knocked out by possibly its partner Politoed, who targets Caleb's side of the field with a Surf. So a very unusual move on Politoed there. The substitute, will it break? It does not, and Tapu Fini firing back a water attack of its own using that Muddy Water. It will connect with that Politoed. It's going to deal a little bit of damage, probably not a lot despite the boost, and whether or not it gets an accuracy drop here could be very important, but fortunately for Justin, we do not see that this turn.
No, but the big thing here for Caleb is he's just showing how much work that substitute did. Of course, he set it up after the Calm Mind, so it benefits from the stat boost of that Calm Mind. And that's now 3 turns that it's taken attacks, admittedly not very effective attacks, and just kept him in that play. Now he's been able to finally attack with the Tapu Fini, and Justin doing him a big favor by bringing the rain. So Muddy Water's going to be doing a little more damage, obviously water type moves boosted by the rain. So Justin, he kind of has that pressure, but Caleb just has enough to switch around and keep it in Justin's head, I think. He'd love to go for a Thunderbolt just to get rid of that substitute, but he's not able to at all with the threat of Marowak, but this time he goes for it.
We do see a Thunderbolt, but it targets that Porygon. Justin not targeting the Tapu Fini. We see a Surf coming out from that Porygon. Will it be enough to knock out the Porygon 2? It is enough to knock out the Porygon Z. It is enough to break that substitute, but Porygon 2 just barely hanging on. We see the Muddy Water animation come out from that Tapu Fini. It does connect with both the Politoed and the Porygon 2 Z, but this time we do see the accuracy drop on that Politoed. We do see the Porygon Z knock out, and Porygon 2 holding on, getting that Trick Room up.
Fantastic turn for Caleb. Finally the substitute goes down for Justin, so he must feel really good about that. He finally got rid of it, obviously trying to get rid of that Porygon 2 with a double attack. Some people do it to try and get rid of it, but the big thing coming in from Justin he does have something in the pocket which functions exceptionally well under Trick Room. It functions exceptionally well under Rain. It's very, very slow. It's got dry skin, and that's why Politoed's been surfing. And it's going to have Spore as well, which now Tapu Fini doesn't have a substitute to protect itself. Could be his way back into the game.
We see the Spore immediately from that Parasect targeting that Tapu Fini, putting it right to sleep. Unfortunately for Caleb, it will have to remain asleep at least for one turn, so it will not be able to attack this turn. Porygon 2 using this opportunity to recover, get some of its health back, and Politoed will be the last Pokemon to move on the field, once again using that Surf. This time, Parasect's dry skin ability would have allowed it to heal from the Surf, however, because it is at full health, we did not see any health regained.
No, and I really love the team selection here from Justin. He did a lot with his leads, of course. He did get a nice offensive pressure up. But then when Caleb decided to set up the Trick Room, looked like Caleb was just going to round out the game under Trick Room, really punish Justin's team, which was very, very quick. Of course, Weavile still in the back isn't going to flourish under the Trick Room. But if he can just see it out with this pair that he's got on the field right now, he's going to be in a good position. He doesn't want to try and get a grass-type attack on the Tapu Fini now, just wants to get everything to sleep so he can slowly whittle it away, and I think that's a perfectly fine play right now.
That is a perfect play by Justin, putting that Porygon 2 to sleep. That Tapu Fini remains asleep as well, and we see another Surf from that Politoed targeting both the Pokemon on Caleb's side of the field. It is barely not enough to knock out that Porygon 2, but unfortunately for Politoed, the Rain has just run out on the field.
That's going to be a blow to him. Of course, he could switch around, get the Weavile back in, get a Fake Out, then maybe bring Politoed back in, but I feel like he's just going to truck on without the boost. Now Parasect is actually able to put down some damage. This turn it's going for it with the Leech Life.
Leech Life from Parasect knocking out Porygon 2. I don't think I saw that one coming today. We see Tapu Fini wake up just in time to get a substitute up and activate its hold item, restoring a huge amount of its health thanks to that Aguav Berry. That substitute's looking pretty great right now. We see another Surf from the Politoed. Most likely it will not break that substitute, but we might see a critical hit here. You never know. This is Pokemon. We do not see a crit. It is not very effective, and that substitute lives on.
No, but I think very smart team building from Caleb goes way back before this game. Of course, knowing that he can get the berry after a substitute just puts him in a really good position. Of course, the Marowak's still not going to be in a great position. It does put really good pressure on the Parasect, but it still has to worry about the Politoed. So I think if he can get rid of the Politoed, then Parasect won't be able to do enough on his own. But I love the mechanic that Justin has in here to play his team a couple of different ways. Unfortunately, Tapu Fini's just been a defensive monster, and that's why we've seen it rise in popularity over the past couple of weeks.
Definitely. Justin, though, made an amazing read during Team Preview, figuring out that Caleb wanted to bring a sort of late-game Trick Room mode and save that Parasect to come out on the field once that Trick Room had been set up. We see Parasect not going for a Spore into the protecting Marowak, instead using Leech Life on the Tapu Fini. The substitute still remains, and we see it fire off a Moonblast into the Politoed to probably clear the way for that Marowak to start dealing damage, most likely to that Parasect next turn, especially since Trick Room just ran out. So now Parasect is no longer the fastest thing on the field.
Parasect isn't the fastest thing on the field, but the saving grace for Justin here is, of course, that he has his Weavile. So Weavile with the Dark typing, now Marowak has that Ghost Fire typing, will be going first now. Trick Room run out, so great timing for it to run out. Of course it can't Fake Out, but it may just be able to knock it out, and if Tapu Fini can't do enough to the Parasect, it could get put to sleep, and then we end up in a very interesting situation. So we know, though, if Weavile does get hit by the Moonblast from Tapu Fini, it's getting knocked out without a shadow of a doubt.
We don't see the Fake Out, instead the Assurance into the Marowak, but it lives with just 13 HP. Moonblast from that Tapu Fini into the Weavile. If this is enough to knock it out, this could be the sign of a game win for Caleb. It is. That Weavile is not holding a Focus Sash because of the King's Rock it flung earlier this game. We see Marowak go for a Flare Blitz into that Parasect. Is it enough for the knockout? Parasect is knocked out, and Caleb wins game one of this series here in what was an amazingly well-played match by both him and Justin.
No, I really like Justin's start. I thought he had it really on himself. He had that Z conversion go up, got that electric typing, but Caleb's team decisions and the way he built this team really helped against the electric types. It was a hard counter to electric types with Crocodile and, of course, a lowland Marowak. So really tough game for that Z conversion to go on. And I think Justin, if he wants to get back in it in game 2 and 3, he's got to show a different mode to his team. We did see a fight back with the Parasect obviously functioning well under the trick room that Caleb set, the Politoed helping that Parasect out, and I think if he wants to win, that's the kind of mode he's going to have to bring forward and really try and get a little bit more out of that. It's got to stop Tapu Fini, though.
Yeah, Tapu Fini was really just uncontested the entirety of that last game. You know, it was threatened by that Porygon Z, but Caleb was able to switch around to make sure that it wasn't really an issue. I think if Justin's looking at this game moving forward, we might see something like that Kartana make a play out on the field to try and possibly stop that Tapu Fini before it can get any substitutes up. You know, Kartana is traditionally a physical attacker, so it doesn't have to worry about the increased bulk from moves such as Calm Mind. Kartana might be the play for Justin. We'll have to see what he decides. Caleb, though, looks like he's ready to go. He locked in his team very quickly.
I definitely think you're right, and I think Kartana needs to come out from Justin pretty much early on in this game. It puts really good pressure down on a number of Caleb's team. It puts pressure on the Tapu Fini, definitely puts pressure on Araquanid. Will struggle a little bit with Marowak, but probably a pretty good answer to Crocodile as well. So if it can get a knockout, the Crocodile has intimidated it. Beast Boost is going to bring it right back up, so I think that might be the answer for Justin. Of course, a lot to keep his Kartana safe as well with the Politoed, and even some Parasect help to get things to sleep. It's really easy to knock things out when they're snoozing.
Definitely. It looks like these trainers are ready to go. Again, this is Caleb Ryer versus Justin Stripe. Caleb taking game 1 in a very close and exciting match to watch. We do see Caleb bring that Tapu Fini once again paired with the Crocodile. And on Justin's side of the field, we see the Politoed and the Tapu Koko, which are two Pokemon you don't normally see together, but certainly have a lot of fun sort of combos you can play with.
Definitely a lot that they can work together with. Unfortunately, Justin is going to lose out on the electric terrain. Tapu Koko much faster than the Tapu Fini, so that's not quite what he wants. I'm sure he would have loved the electric terrain to set that up. Would have definitely helped him if he'd have got that. So I'm curious to see if he can play on without that terrain, but I'm really happy he hasn't bought the Porygon. I think that was the big sort of mistake he made, relying on that in game 1, because Caleb clearly had the answer to it.
Yeah, and you know, seeing a lead like this from Justin, part of me can't help but wonder if we might see a Thunder from that Tapu Koko, but instead we see the Tapu Koko switch out, and in its place it is the Porygon Z making an appearance once again. Crocodile switching out as well. Caleb revealing that he brought his own Kartana on the field. We see a Scald from that Politoed into the Kartana, not going to deal a lot of damage, but if we see a burn here, that could be critical. We do not see the bird, and Tapu Fini is free to start using that Calm Mind move that just allowed it to stay on the field for so long, starting with the last game.
Of course, it would be nice if Justin could get the burn, but the terrain war being won by Caleb means that burn cannot happen while Misty Terrain is in play. So Kartana can switch into the Scald. Yes, it takes a good amount of damage, but it's like a little less risky as it has been in previous years, because you know you can't get burned. So now it's in. Obviously, it's in a good position to catch something with a Grass-type move. It's going to be able to do a lot to Politoed. It does also have access to Sacred Sword, we've seen, so it's going to be able to do a lot of damage to Porygon Z. I think that Kartana switch was a fantastic move from Caleb.
We see a second Scald into the Kartana, but it lives with just 18 HP despite the crit. Kartana firing back a Leaf Blade, targeting that Politoed, and it's going to easily knock it out, no questions asked. So we will see Kartana benefit from that Beast Boost ability, and it will boost Kartana's attack by 1 stage. And we also see the Z conversion again from Justin, powering up that Porygon Z.
Again, it's going to become the electric type, which isn't ideal, especially in this matchup. You don't get to choose, it's based on the first move slot, so although the stat boosts are really nice, the type changing may actually end up hurting him, of course, with the Crocodile in the back from Caleb. If he brings that in and catches it with an Earthquake or even something a little more powerful, like a Tectonic Rage, if it carries it, some of them do, then I think his Z move is doing a lot more work for him than Justin's is for him.
We do see Justin send out the Kartana, but now that that Tapu Fini has that substitute set up, it will have at least 1 turn, possibly more, to start, you know, dealing a little bit of damage to Justin's side of the field.
Yeah, it's been really good, that Tapu Fini, and I think after Enosh's success with it, a lot of people picking it up, and I love the way that Caleb's played it, kind of put his own spin on it, you know, substitute and Calm Mind, very, very defensive, so obviously he feels that defensive play style is good for him. His team has very good synergy, and I think he's just been able to play defensive enough to slow down the all-out offensive Justin team. We did see the Politoed going very early in the turn, so likely holding that Choice Scarf. Justin just trying to knock things out as quickly as possible.
Kartana switching out and Marowak coming back out on the field in its place. So Caleb definitely afraid of a Thunderbolt here, but a great read by Justin, ice beaming the Marowak slot. So it doesn't deal a lot of damage, but it wasn't absorbed by Lightning Rod, so that's always a win. We see Leaf Blade from that Kartana targeting the Tapu Fini. It's super effective. It takes that substitute down, but Tapu Fini is free to use Muddy Water, which is boosted by the rain that's currently out on the field. It does connect with both the Pokemon on Justin's side of the field, but more importantly, we see Porygon Z get an accuracy drop, which is definitely not something you want to deal with when you're already down 1 game loss.
No, that's definitely not going to help. And the interesting thing here as well is there's a good read, of course, by Justin to not throw out the Thunderbolt. But, you know, admittedly some damage is better than no damage, but it's just not quite enough. The interesting thing here is, though, now he's finally got rid of that substitute, he might actually be able to capitalize this turn. We've seen all 4 moves on the Tapu Fini, so if he can either catch it without the Protect, or even catch something on the switch in, that Kartana may be able to pick up a knockout, and if he has a way to handle the Marowak, which it looks pretty unlikely right now, you know, then maybe he could get rolling back in, but I just think so far, Caleb's synergy and switching has been on point every single turn, and he looks to be pushing on to win this game.
We see Crocodile switch in, Marowak leaving the field. That Intimidate will certainly help counteract any sort of offensive capabilities that Kartana has right now, so not the best position for Justin to be in. We see a Protect from that Porygon Z, and Kartana using that Leaf Blade to target the Tapu Fini. Even with the Intimidate, it is unable to knock it out. So great play by Caleb. He needed that Intimidate there to help his Tapu Fini survive, who heals all of its health back practically with that Agua Berry. But unfortunately, targets down the Muddy Water. It will not connect with that Porygon 2, but it does connect with the Kartana, and it will knock it out.
No, I think what's happened here with Justin's team, very interesting idea at team building. Obviously it's been doing him well so far today, but I think he just got a little less than he bargained for on every single turn. He's not quite managed to get the big damage. He's fallen short of so many knockouts, and Caleb's showing just how good training your Pokemon defensively can be. So he's in a very good position. That Tapu Fini staying around. Justin looked like he was able to finally get rid of it. Makes a fantastic switch with the Crocodile, knowing of course it's pretty safe, you know, it's not going to get too much damage put down on it. Justin being exceptionally safe and protecting Porygon 2, which I think if he'd have Ice Beamed the Marowak slot again, would have caught Crocodile on the switch, would have been a lot of damage, which would have been nice.
Yeah, which might have been very important going into this turn. You know, it is worth noting that Justin has 2 very powerful electric-type Pokemon on his side of the field who are benefiting from that electric terrain. Unfortunately, though, you know, Crocodile is a ground-type Pokemon. It's not going to take any damage from electric-type attacks. And with Marowak out on the field, we have to worry about that Lightning Rod as well. Ice Beam into that Marowak, switching in for the Crocodile, not very effective, but hidden power from that Tapu Koko. What type is it? It is not enough to get the knockout. It is super effective, so we know it might be something like a ground type or maybe even a water type or something. Muddy Water from that Tapu Fini gets the knockout on Porygon 2. Tapu Koko just barely hanging on as the rain stops.
I didn't realize not enough to get the knockout was a new type. If they added that one in after Fairy or... But no, this game seriously comes down to fantastic team building by Caleb. His team has managed to take all the big hits that Justin has thrown at it, and that's been very impressive, something we didn't see in the last format, most likely, and we've just seen it come alive in this current format. So I think
to pull out a win here today, it'll certainly be a great help for him moving forward in this tournament as these trainers enter Team Preview. Carson is running Marowak, Porygon Z, Araquanid, Tapu Koko, Kartana, and Crocodile versus Enosh's team of Trevenant, Smeargle, Celesteela, Crocodile, Tapu Fini, and Marowak. So a little bit of similar teams here. I see a lot of Marowak, I see a lot of Araquanid, and interestingly enough, I see a lot of Crocodile.
Yeah, both players carrying that Crocodile. Obviously both big fans of it, and I think we've seen it a few times today, really used to good effect, so it's definitely something to watch out for. Carson, we're having a chat before the game, says he was heavily inspired by Enosh's team, so that's definitely already a slight tick in Enosh's favour that he's going to know how this plays, at least the core of it, and Carson's going to have to hope he's got his own spin on it enough to be able to pull it out against Enosh. Of course, Enosh not sticking with that same team, making a couple of changes, mainly that Trevenant, going to be something completely different that he wants. wants, but if it does what he needs to, if he saw the one weakness in his team, that being the hard Trick Room of Gavin Michaels, of course, in the finals, Trevenant's a pretty good answer. It sets Trick Room itself, it can reverse it as well. So I think that change might just be as a result of San Jose, but the rest of it, he's still exceptionally comfortable with.
Yes, and these trainers are ready and raring to go. I'm very excited to see what these two are going to lead. Part of me kind of hopes we see that Smeargle come out on Inash's side of the field. But Tapu Koko and Cortana sent out from Carson. And Inash sticking with the Tapu Fini that did him so well a couple weeks ago in San Jose. But this time pairing it with a Celesteela, interestingly enough.
No, very, I think, safe and defensive lead from Enosh. We've talked a lot today about player styles and teams adapting to that player style. And we see a very defensive lead from him, which is something he's been renowned for in the past. Carson, the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Tapu Koko and Cortana, both very fast and very offensive. The Tapu Koko putting great pressure, of course, on both Pokemon on Enosh's side of the field, losing out a little bit by not having the terrain of choice up, not getting the boost from electric terrain, but it's still going to be able to throw Thunderbolts at things. Of course, there are options for switches. The Crocodile in the back may be a good switch. The Marowak as well, as we saw in the previous round. Those two really nullify the threat of electric types, so you can quite boldly lead these two and then make those right switches around to get in a really good position.
We see Cortana switch out on Carson's side of the field. That Araquanid coming in its place. Tapu Fini switching out as well into the Marowak. So a great defensive switch there. That Marowak utilizing its Lightning Rod ability right off the bat to absorb that Thunderbolt and boost its special attack stat. We see Celesteela go for a Flamethrower onto the Araquanid. So a really interesting tech choice there. Unfortunately, it doesn't deal a lot of damage, but had that been a Cortana, that would have been a very different story.
It would have been, and a lot of board positioning coming in on this time. Obviously, very minimal damage done. Of course, Araquanid, normal effective damage coming out from that fire move, but Water Bubble, the ability that's made it so popular, really helping it out there. So a nice bit of board positioning, I think slightly more from Enosh's side of the field.
We see both Marowak on Enosh's side of the field and Araquanid on Carson's side of the field protect this turn. We see that Tapu Koko use Discharge, so circumventing the Lightning Rod ability on that Marowak, targeting down that Celesteela. It brings it down to about half health, and Tapu Koko takes recoil from its Life Orb hold item. Leech Seed from Celesteela into the protecting Araquanid, but we do see Celesteela reveal its hold item, and it is indeed holding that Leftovers item that it loves so much.
So that turn looked a little bit treacherous for Carson, of course. We saw Thunderbolt on turn 1 out of Tapu Koko, and not everyone is running both Thunderbolt and Discharge. So having that option available is very good for him, means he is still able to get some damage out, and a Smart Protect means Enosh doesn't actually accomplish anything in that turn. I think this game is still very finely tuned, just hanging in the balance, and I think if Carson can keep getting Discharges up, and perhaps find a way to put pressure on the Marowak as well, it's going to be good. The Araquanid is a good way to put pressure on it, but it can't stay in there while Tapu Koko is trying to discharge.
Tapu Koko switching out this turn. The Porygon 2 coming out into play, getting an attack boost from its download ability. Heavy Slam from that Celesteela into the Araquanid, but it hardly does any damage at all. Marowak uses its Shadow Bone, also targeting that Araquanid, going for a knockout, but it misses it just barely and lowers Araquanid's defense, but it also activates Araquanid's held item, which is an Ayapapa Berry, and Araquanid using Liquidation, which is a move that is sort of its signature move, I believe, for this generation to knock out that Marowak.
It really is, and with the use of Water Bubble, it's just doing so much damage. So Carson actually clearing the field of a really big threat to his team. Now when he brings Tapu Koko in, he's free to start Thunderbolting again. He doesn't have to make the protect plays going around to get the discharges off, of course. So a very good turn for Carson. Got the Porygon 2 in for absolutely free, so maybe able to set up something there. Maybe able to get a Trick Room up to assist this Araquanid. And Enosh actually not capitalizing on a chance to set up Leech Seed and get even more health back on that Celesteela. So Enosh played it quite safe, tried to just go for the knockout with pure damage, missed it, gave Carson that berry, which is exceptionally important, means that Araquanid is looking pretty healthy again. And then, of course, now Crocodile's still under threat from Araquanid.
Crocodile is still under threat, and that Porygon 2 is essentially given a free turn here to do whatever it wants, provided that Enosh doesn't have some sort of interesting tech on that Crocodile to stop it. We see the Araquanid switch out, the Kartana coming in its place to take a crunch from that Crocodile, followed up by a Leech Seed from the Celesteela into the Porygon 2, and Porygon 2 left to use Thunderbolt against the Celesteela. It does not deal enough for a knockout, but it does a pretty sizable amount, all things considered.
It does, and I think it's a smart switch. It looks like Araquanid's in a really good position to do something, but we do know, of course, that it's been intimidated, so it's nice to get it out. He manages to get Kartana, which won't take too much damage from the crunch, and I think he was hoping Enosh would Leech Seed into that slot, which we'd seen before. So, interesting switch from Carson. Doesn't quite achieve as much as he'd like, and obviously that Celesteela does get a Leech Seed down on Porygon, so the pressure is on to try and get the knockout on it as soon as possible. There is, of course, the Tapu Koko in the back, and this Kartana putting the pressure on the Crocodile in the same way the Araquanid was. So Carson just pivoting a little bit, just wants to reassess the board and just try and keep on trucking as he is. So I'd be interested to see if he can keep up this pace.
We see Carson switch out that Kartana and send Tapu Koko into the field in its place. That Electric Surge activating the electric terrain, getting rid of the misty terrain, and boosting Porygon 2's Thunderbolt attack. If it decides to use that this turn, we see Tapu Fini, though, switch in for the Crocodile and bring back the Misty Terrain. So a great read there from Enosh. Heavy Slam into the Tapu Koko. Will it be enough to knock it out? Unfortunately, it is not. Thunderbolt from that Porygon 2 into the Celesteela, and Celesteela hangs on.
Oh, that's so smart from Enosh to switch in the Tapu Fini there, knowing obviously how much the Thunderbolt did before with the electric terrain up. He manages to nullify some of that damage, take that damage down, and that means Celesteela is still around. But looking at the 3 Pokemon Enosh has remaining, he's relying a lot on this Crocodile. We've seen Tapu Koko has Discharge, so if it can get it off on the 2 Pokemon Enosh currently has on the field, he's going to be doing a lot of damage. If he can perhaps switch around a little bit, get Tapu Koko's electric terrain back up, he's going to be in a fantastic position here. So I think Carson still has a slight upper hand, but we've seen Enosh knows how to switch around, knows how to play this team exceptionally well.
Carson switching out that Porygon 2 into his Kartana. Tapu Koko protecting this turn. So Celesteela protecting as well. So Tapu Fini has a great opportunity here to set something up. Instead, we see it go for a Muddy Water, which will make contact with that Kartana. It is yet to be seen how much damage that'll deal and whether or not it'll get the accuracy drop should Kartana survive. It does survive, however, we do not see that accuracy drop.
No, and I think missing the knockout on that Kartana could be a bit of a problem. Of course, Kartana switching in, so if it has that ability to protect, now would be a really good time. We do see, though, some Kartanas not able to do that, some of them using particularly choice items, or even assault vests in rare cases. So I think Carson just wants to set up a nice situation where he can discharge. Potentially he was bringing in the Kartana to get it knocked out and bring something else in, and obviously keep Porygon nice and safe. But Enosh not capitalizing on a turn where he could be setting up with Tapu Fini. We have seen him use Tapu Fini with a lot of setup. You know, maybe he's moved away from that, but before that was his go-to. Be interested to see if he's using exactly the same again, and if that's the way to go with it.
Celesteela switching out on Enosh's side of the field, that Crocodile taking the field in its place, looking to intimidate that Kartana and most likely that Tapu Koko as well, possibly also looking to absorb that Thunderbolt if Tapu Koko should target it. Leaf Blade into the Tapu Fini. It's super effective and it gets a critical hit. So that Intimidate not working out for Enosh there. Kartana getting that +1 attack boost from its Beast Boost ability. Thunderbolt though does go into the Crocodile and will not deal any damage.
No, I think Carson's just got himself in a winning position as well. Of course, Kartana coming in does more than just buy him some time, you know, give him an option. It really lets him put another set of pressure on the Tapu Fini. The critical hit definitely helps. Leaf Blade, of course, with that increased chance to score the critical hit. But when you get them when you need them, it really, really helps. So Enosh, I think, definitely in a sticky situation. The Beast Boost making the Intimidate null and void, so Kartana's still in a really good position to attack this Crocodile.
Leaf Blade into the Crocodile, and it gets another knockout. Crocodile unfortunately unable to deal any damage this turn. Kartana getting a second Beast Boost, and given the fact that it's down to just that Celesteela versus all 4 of Carson's Pokemon, I believe this will be game over for Anash, unless that Celesteela might have something tricky up its sleeve.
We have seen Celesteela pull back some really tough matches, but with the amount of Pokemon Carson has left remaining, I just can't see it. So Enosh actually going down a game to a team that's exceptionally similar to his. That means he is going to know how to adapt going into games 2 and 3 with it, but that's got to give Carson a lot of confidence, and I think the switches he made, some of the predicts he made as well, were really on point. I love some of the switches, especially the Kartana into the crunch, and when Kartana came back in later as well, every time Kartana hit the field, it was there to serve a purpose as he moved on throughout the game. So that's been doing a lot of work for Carson.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and Carson showing why he's a world champion. Being able to play at such a high level, even though he just got out of the senior division, is huge, I think, in showing and sort of predicting how the rest of the season is going to go for him. Whether or not he can sort of adapt to Anash adapting to that game, I think we've seen Anash sort of take information gathered from past games and just use it to absolutely pummel his opponent, to steal a word from one of the Z moves we've seen today.
Would you say it was an all-out pummeling in games 2 and 3? Or?
I would say that Anash definitely has the capability for an all-out pummeling in games 2 and 3. But given how well Carson and how smartly Carson played the first game, it's going to be an interesting matchup. And both these trainers really need to think about both how do they adapt and how they think their opponent will adapt to how they think their opponent thinks they are going to adapt.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting.
There are lots of mind games.
There's a ton of mind games being played. We are, of course, back in team preview for game number 2. We'll have a quick rundown of the teams again. On Enosh's side, the Trevenant, the Smeargle, which we didn't see, Celesteela, Crocodile, Tapu Fini, and Marowak, while Carson using a variant of Enosh's team from San Jose, Marowak, Porygon 2, Araquanid, Tapu Koko, Kartana, and Crocodile. So a lot of similarities, but it feels like the way that Carson trained and played his team in that game just gave him a slight edge.
Definitely. And Carson, you know, it looks like he selected his team very quickly while Anash is taking a little bit more time, which makes me think that Carson is feeling very confident going into this next game. I mean, he already won 1 against Anash. Certainly, it seems like he had plenty of options and plenty of opportunities for his team to sort of even have a little bit more wiggle room. And I mean, he did 4-0 Anash. So
yeah, taking a 4-0 win against Enosh is a really big deal. There's not many people that can do that. Of course, in his run in San Jose, he barely dropped a game all day. Not just winning matches, barely dropping games. So he's a really tough player. I know he's capable of the bounce back, but if Carson just makes the same kind of calls he did in game 1, picks the correct 4 for the 4 that Enosh brings, he's going to be in really good shape to show that he's leveled up to the Masters division. He's in a really good position to go and take it back to the World Championship.
And Carson leads this game with the combination of Tapu Koko and Crocodile versus Anash's Celesteela and Smeargle, which is an old familiar face, I think, to a lot of people in the video game championships circuit.
It's been around a lot, and it got a lot of notoriety last year. Of course, losing one of its big assets, it was able to sketch Dark Void, and that would be able to put both Pokemon to sleep. Fortunately, I believe, it doesn't have that anymore. It has to resort to other sleep moves such as Spore, but being able to put things to sleep, still very important. It's changed up its bag of tricks. We've not seen it as much this year, but I know there are tricks up its sleeve that it can really pull out.
And Carson possibly making a great read against that just in team preview, sending out its Tapu Koko to get that electric terrain to keep Pokemon awake. And even if Anash were to switch his own Tapu, his Tapu Fini, onto the field, that would bring up Misty terrain, which would still not allow that Smeargle to put any Pokemon to sleep. So it looks like everybody is wired and raring to go. We see that Crocodile switch in for the Celesteela on Anash's side of the field. Smeargle using Fake Out onto the Tapu Koko. And Crocodile on Carson's side of the field targeting Anash's Crocodile with a crunch of its own.
Yeah, nice safe play, I think. Enosh not giving away too much, barely any damage switched around between the two, so just the same kind of thing we saw in turn 1 of the last game. A lot about the board position, getting the things on the field that they want for the follow-up. Of course, Smeargle has pretty much any move it wants, and now it's used that Fake Out. It may be able to do a lot more. I think it's still popular to use Follow Me with it, really direct attention away, but the threat of spread moves from both sides of the field mean that's not going to be ideal at all. So definitely up to Carson, I think, to make the read here.
Carson switching out his Tapu Koko and sending in the Araquanid in its place. Araquanid certainly going to resist a lot of Crocodile's attacks. We see Smeargle switch out as well, and the Celesteela take the field again in its place. And here is a Z move. It looks like it is the Groundium Z on the Crocodile.
It is going to be the Tectonic Rage coming out of the Crocodile. It is going to be doing a lot of damage. We have seen both the Dark type and the Ground type Z move coming out on the Crocodiles so far, and just driving it into the center of the earth, looking to try and get rid of it.
Up in an explosion of magma in Nosh's Crocodile, knocking out Carson's Crocodile. So that could have been a speed tie. That might be an indication of how these Crocodiles are trained. But definitely a great play by Enosh, able to secure himself a one Pokemon lead where, you know, in the last game we didn't see any leads at all from him. So he must be feeling good going into this next turn.
Yeah, I like the switch up to use the Groundium Z in this game. You know, he knows that it does a huge amount of damage, truly preposterous amounts of damage with that Groundium Z. And that's what he needs. If he can get the lead, I think he's in a better position, because the way Carson played game one involved a lot of smart switching. It's tougher to switch with just 3 Pokemon. So Enosh may be getting the benefit of the doubt, you know, winning that speed tie, just really trucking on with that huge Groundium Z. Unfortunately, now Crocodile is under pressure from the Araquanid, and Celesteela under pressure from the Tapu Koko. So Carson has the cards in hand to definitely quickly swing momentum back his way.
Interestingly enough, we see Tapu Koko protect this turn, Celesteela protecting as well. So if that Crocodile were to target that Tapu Koko, it would be unfortunate, but that Crocodile uses Earthquake, so that Araquanid will take some damage from that attack. However, it's not going to be nearly enough for any kind of KO. That Araquanid is just so bulky, and it fires back a super powered liquidation into the Crocodile for the knockout.
Very good play from Carson there. I love what he did. Slight misplay, I believe, on Enosh's part. What he could have done there, Celesteela did not need to protect. So it could have got a Leech Seed down, it could have maybe heavy slammed for a bit of damage on something. But playing it safe, obviously scared of something from the Tapu Koko, probably the Thunderbolt, because he doesn't have all the Pokemon he needs now to really answer that. So Enosh playing a little bit too safe, and Carson, knowing Araquanid's not under threat from Earthquake, Enosh just trying to get damage on the Tapu Koko into the very smart protect from Carson means Araquanid just picks up an easy knockout and a really nice position from Enosh. Of course, he gets Smeargle back in.
Smeargle faking out that Tapu Koko once again. It also takes a heavy slam from the Celesteela, but it hangs on. That Araquanid uses Liquidation against the Celesteela and does a huge amount of damage.
Yeah, doing that much to a Celesteela is absolutely massive. It's going to be
enormous.
really tough to just lose that much health on your Celesteela every single turn. It likes to take a little bit of damage, get Leech Seeds out, recover it up with leftovers and protect. And doing that much is really, really good. We didn't see anything go down on the Smeargle, and I believe this year, if people bring Smeargle, they likely bring a Focus Sash variant, so it would have been nice to get some damage down and break that Focus Sash. So I think Carson, not too worried about it. That damage on Celesteela is very important. But with 3 Pokemon apiece, Tapu Koko heavily damaged, of course, Celesteela able to protect this turn. Could be a tough one, I think, for Carson. Could be a tough one for Enosh. This next turn looks to be absolutely crucial, if you ask me.
Yes, this next turn is huge, and Celesteela starts it off with a Protect, so it won't take any damage from the Thunderbolt that Tapu Koko fires off. Smeargle using Endeavor against that Araquanid. It lowers its HP a little bit because that Smeargle is still at full health, but that might be a great indication that Smeargle is holding that Focus Sash item, allowing it to hang on from that attack from the Araquanid.
Having Smeargle on the field for one more turn is going to be huge for Enosh. Of course, a slight misplay by Carson this turn, throwing the Thunderbolt into the Protect, where in a previous turn we saw him correctly call the Protect and protect his own Tapu Koko. So, very small misplays by each player, and I don't think either player's managed to successfully capitalize on it. Of course, that Smeargle, we've seen it Endeavor, it's not going to do any more to Araquanid, so now it's got to look in for another trick in its box of tricks. It will be able to access Spore if it wants. There is no terrain out on the field right now, but it's not going to be doing any of that. It's actually just going to switch out.
Marowak switching in for that Smeargle, and we see Araquanid go for a Protect, which means we might be seeing the Discharge from that Tapu Koko, which is a great play. It will not deal any damage to that Marowak, but it will be able to successfully target that Celesteela. And without that electric terrain, though, it just barely misses the knockout. Tapu Koko taking some recoil damage from its Life Orb and Flamethrower into the Tapu Koko for the knockout.
We see in that turn just how important it is to keep your terrain in play. When it's essential to your team, you want to keep it in play, and missing out on that extra damage from Carson's side of the field means Celesteela manages to get the knockout in return and really get Enosh back, I think, just a slight step ahead. Very smart switch from Enosh, knowing that the Thunderbolt was a issue, brings in Marowak to try and get Lightning Rod. But even one step ahead of that, beautiful prediction by Carson to throw out Discharge and protect Araquanid. So I like that play a lot from Carson, but I still feel that Enosh just kind of had the answer to it because he knew the terrain wasn't up, and that was definitely one thing that would give him a little bit of respite in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised, honestly, that Carson didn't use that Discharge maybe a turn or two sooner. It would have still benefited from the electric terrain at that point, but, you know, Carson's still in a pretty great position. The Sacred Sword targeting that Celesteela who just protected. Marowak with the Flare Blitz going to deal a huge amount of damage to that Kartana, but it is enough to knock it out. We do not see a Focus Sash item on that Kartana, so that's great information for Enosh moving forward. Araquanid with that Liquidation, though, targeting the Marowak and most definitely knocking it out.
That is an easy knockout for Araquanid, but it is now Araquanid, the interesting water bubble spider, against the world, of course. Celesteela may be able to buy some time. It would love to set up a Leech Seed, I'm sure, but looking at, of course, the amount of damage Araquanid did with Liquidation earlier in the game, not going to be so easy. Might be a little bit easier now, though, with Smeargle to help out. We have seen earlier in the game Smeargle moving before Araquanid, which means if it does have Spore available to it, then it's going to be able to get it to sleep, which allows Celesteela some time to get back in the game. So will a Fake Out.
We see Smeargle fake out the Araquanid. Celesteela using Leech Seed, targeting that Araquanid to heal even more of its health. It looks like it might come down to a heavy slam here versus that Araquanid. I'm not sure if Enosh wants to reveal quite yet whether or not he has that Spore moving forward, especially since it looks like this game may lean in his favor. We might see him use something like a Follow Me perhaps, or some other form of misdirection. You know, knowing that I think knowing that my opponent has Spore moving forward into a Game 3 situation would be a lot more valuable than knowing whether or not their Smeargle had something like Follow Me. But hey, we see the Spore putting that Araquanid to sleep. Enosh playing it super safe, knowing his win conditions, targeting that Araquanid with a heavy slam. Is it enough to squish the spider? It is not.
Not quite.
Araquanid hanging on, consuming its Ayapapa berry, I believe we saw, and yeah, this game is still going to go on.
It looked like he was really close to the win there, Enosh. But of course, the Papa Berry, bringing it back to such a huge amount of health. Good thing for Celesteela, though, that health is, of course, going to be able to be sucked away with Leech Seed, so definitely going to be buying some time for himself there. We did see on Enosh's Celesteela one interesting thing. A lot of players, particularly at the beginning of the season, put Substitute on it, so now would be a great time to set up a Substitute, but with Enosh taking Flamethrower, he sacrificed that Substitute, and if we get an early wake up from Araquanid, maybe it gets a knockout on Smeargle when it wakes up, then it's going to be a really uphill struggle for Enosh just to win it with Celesteela. So he needs a lot to come out of this.
This game is going right down to the wire. Celesteela protecting this turn. Smeargle with the Endeavor targeting that Araquanid, bringing it down to 1 HP. And unfortunately, it does not wake up. So provided Celesteela is able to connect. Actually, wait, no, that doesn't even matter because of that Leech Seed.
Leech Seed
will
win
take
it.
that 1 HP back from that Araquanid, give it to Celesteela, and give Enosh the win. So we will be moving on to Game 3 here in Dallas.
Yeah, Endeavor's one way to deal with the healing effect of an Ayapapa Berry. Of course, it does get 50% of its health back. Doesn't matter, though. If Smeargle's got it asleep, has Endeavor, and is clinging on with a Focus Sash, bring it down to 1 health, and Leech Seed will round it out. So Enosh, little bit rocky at the start, I think. We definitely saw Carson get some good turns off. We saw Enosh get some good turns off. And then as we move forward into the back end of the game, Enosh just picked up a little bit more on the misplays that Carson made. Punishing him using his own team, essentially, is what I really enjoyed. And game 3 looks like it's going to be an absolute thriller.
Yeah, both Enosh and Carson really need to bring their A game. I mean, as you can see, these trainers are just putting so much thought into every single move they're making. Even just the smallest slip up can really make a difference and allow their opponent to edge ahead. So moving forward into this game, it's time to focus. It's time to take a little bit of a breath, maybe focus on the basics, focus on what you know and what you need for your win conditions, and then just hope for the best. For those of you just tuning in, once again, this is Enosh Shahar versus Carson Confer, and Enosh is running Trevenant, Smeargle, Celesteela, Crocodile, Tapu Fini, and Marowak versus Carson's team of Marowak, Porygon 2, or excuse me, that is Porygon 2, Araquanid, Tapu Koko, Kartana, and Crocodile.
I'd be interested to see the one thing, I don't know if it's so vital, but it would be definitely curious to see, is the Trevenant come out of Enosh.
I don't know.
think it's so useful this game, especially with the way Carson's been playing, but if Enosh has something that he likes about it, really wants to throw a spanner in the works, I mean, it does have access to strong grass type moves, and we've seen the amount of damage Araquanid has been doing from Carson's side of the field, so that might be one of the answers to it. Of course, Carson's team got a few answers to Trevenant, Marowak being a really, really big one there, Crocodile also being a big one, but I think, if he can bring it in, keep it safe and deal with Araquanid that way, that's an option, might be why he's kept it hidden until game 3.
Yes, I think if Enosh were to bring that Trevenant, I don't think we'll be seeing Smeargle this game because they sort of form the same function on the field. That Smeargle being used to endeavor that Araquanid to sort of stop it from raining terror on the battlefield with that water bubble ability. Carson leading this game with Tapu Koko and Crocodile. Enosh bringing both the Trevenant and the Smeargle. So I guess we both sort of got what we wanted there.
Yeah, Trevenant here is actually in a decent position, of course. It's going to be able to put pressure down on Crocodile on the condition that it can stay safe from Crocodile. Now, there's one very easy way to keep it safe. You've got the fake out from Smeargle, you've got the follow me from Smeargle, so it looks like Enosh putting a lot of eggs in the Trevenant tree. It's not where eggs grow, but that's where they're staying for this match. And I think he's going to have to work this pair. These were the two changes he made to his team. He obviously made the changes for a reason. So he knows that there's something they can do, and it's up to Carson to either know or very, very quickly figure out what they're up to in this match.
Definitely. We did see the fake out from Smeargle in that last game, so most likely we'll be seeing it again. We see Carson switch out the Crocodile, sending in the Araquanid in its place. Smeargle with the fake out into the Araquanid. Tapu Koko going for a Dazzling Gleam, looking to break Smeargle's Focus Sash, deal a little bit of damage to that Trevenant as well, but Trevenant completely unfazed, gets a Trick Room set up.
No, that's really nice. Of course, Trevenant now able to put big pressure down on the Araquanid. Smeargle's support options a little bit limited. Usually Smeargle has the option to function very well under Trick Room. Some people running it with minimum speed training involved, so it's able to put pressure down, but of course Carson with that electric terrain means he's not going to get put to sleep by the Spore that we've seen. Of course, Araquanid coming in was nice. It would have been nice if he'd faked out the Tapu Koko, of course, and taken no damage, but on the flip side, it means his Endeavor is going to be doing a lot of work, so he may be able to just take one knockout and then Endeavor something else for an easier knockout the turn after.
Smeargle switching out, saving that Endeavor for later. Celesteela taking the field in its place. Tapu Koko leaving the field as well, and Porygon 2 showing up on Carson's side of the field, activating its download ability, but unfortunately getting that attack boost. Liquidation from that Araquanid into the Celesteela brings it down to just below half health, and Woodhammer from that Trevenant, unfortunately not targeting the Araquanid, instead targeting that Porygon 2.
No, I think fantastic play from Carson there. It looks on paper very obvious. Trick Room is up, you've got your Araquanid in the way of the Woodhammer, so it looks like, oh yeah, I'm just going to protect Araquanid and then go for it. So Enosh makes that read, but Carson actually just getting a massive amount of damage down with the liquidation on Celesteela, so I think Carson got a little more than he could have in that turn. Definitely capitalized on a smart prediction.
Lunge from the Araquanid into the Trevenant, lowers its attack. Woodhammer from Trevenant into the Araquanid in return, but thanks to that attack drop, it's just not going to deal enough damage. Thunderbolt from that Porygon into the protecting Celesteela.
No, I think what's really interesting here as well is Carson's Araquanid actually underspeeds in Trick Room, so he must know what Trick Room's got going for it this year, and I really enjoy that that lunge comes out. Of course, Woodhammer wouldn't have got the knockout anyway, but just showing how little damage it does makes what looked like a really big threat, especially if Crocodile comes back in. I mean, it would get an Intimidate down, but could still be a threat. Makes it really not a non-starter in this match.
Trevenant using Protect this turn, not wanting to possibly have its attack dropped even further by that lunge. Araquanid attacking that Trevenant. We see Porygon 2 with the Thunderbolt into the Celesteela, and thanks to the help from the electric terrain, Celesteela is left with just a sliver of health. It targets that Araquanid with Leech Seed, but that was an absolutely incredible survival there from that Celesteela.
Clinging on with a singular point of health is just what Enosh's needs. Of course, this match doesn't look to be going in his favor. Pokemon numbers equal, but although he got what he wanted at the beginning of the match, I feel Carson over the next few turns has just really soaked up that pressure and put even more back down on Enosh. So that Celesteela getting the Leech Seed down is going to be helpful, but Carson definitely has the option to just switch it out so it's not getting any recovery at all. Trevenant now caught with a lunge. It may be getting caught with another one. Not now, though.
Enosh with the second Protect in a row. Celesteela protecting as well. Araquanid attacking that Trevenant, and Porygon 2 attacking the actually Porygon 2 targeted that Trevenant.
Yeah, it looks like that's something it really wants to get rid of. Maybe just assumed the Celesteela Protect. Once you've got a Leech Seed up, it usually follows the turn after that you just protect it, so you've got recovery for the next turn where you go with it. Very lucky from Enosh to get the double Protect there. Gives a little more time, and actually it looks like he wanted his own Trick Room to expire because now he's able to move before the Trevenant. So very nice play from Enosh. He realized what he did wrong at the beginning of the game, didn't realize perhaps that Araquanid would underspeed and therefore move first in Trick Room. And I think Enosh just now isn't the time he needs to come back. Now Trick Room is over. He just needs to make sure Carson doesn't set it back up, because Carson was pretty enjoying playing in Trick Room.
Definitely, and that Porygon 2 will certainly be able to set up Trick Room if that's what Carson decides he needs to do this turn. Unless Trevenant has like a hidden trick somewhere, maybe a hidden taunt, it looks like that Porygon 2 is going to be able to move successfully thanks to all of that bulk that the Eviolite item brings to it. You know, it really is just this unstoppable force in this metagame right now, and you need to have an answer to Trick Room, or otherwise you're just going to be forced to deal with whatever it decides to do. We see that Heavy Slam from Celesteela into the Araquanid, just missing the knockout, gets a critical hit, activates that Ayapapa Berry, so Araquanid going right back up in terms of its health. Porygon 2 not going for a Trick Room this turn, instead Thunderbolt into the Celesteela for the knockout. Trevenant is left on the field using that Woodhammer to target that Araquanid. Even with a little bit of damage, it just wasn't enough. It needed that Heavy Slam to either knock out or somehow not activate that berry.
No, that's very nice. Getting that Papa Berry on both sides in this one turn, obviously on the Araquanid and the Trevenant, showing that Trevenant can do something. Does get caught by the lunge though, so now even it missed the knockout last turn, it's going to be probably missing it again this turn, and it just becomes exceptionally frustrating for Enosh to play against that. He does know the tricks of his own team, of course, but it looks like he's being caught a little bit short by them. Carson just very smart in every play he makes, every read, every adaptation. I think he's just really adapted to this game beautifully as we move through this set. So I think Enosh has a lot to do, but with Trevenant at exceptionally low health, Smeargle at exceptionally low health, he's definitely got an uphill struggle. Considering Porygon 2 is at full health and seems to be putting down a lot of pressure even without Trick Room.
Yeah, we do know Smeargle does have Endeavor, which this would certainly be a great opportunity to use it on that Porygon 2. I think this match all sort of hinges on what Pokemon Enosh has brought as his final Pokemon. If it's a Pokemon that's able to deal a massive amount of damage very quickly, we might see Enosh sort of spin this around. We do see Trevenant with that substitute. We see Araquanid targeting the Smeargle with the liquidation for the knockout. So it's all going to come down to whatever Pokemon takes the field next.
Yeah, that's going to be really big, and of course setting the substitute up buys Enosh a little bit of time. We do know that Trevenant has the Harvest ability, so it may be trying to buy time, looking at how low its health is, maybe trying to get another activation of the Papa Berry in there and really swing it back in his favor. Unfortunately, 2v4, It's going to need to get a lot of very successful harvests off, and this Marowak's going to have a tough time against this Porygon, most certainly.
Ice Beam into the Trevenant, trying to break that substitute. Will it be enough? It's super effective. It gets the critical hit, and the substitute fades. Marowak with the Shadow Bone targeting that Araquanid, trying to finally knock it out. Unfortunately, it is knocked out. Trevenant using its own Trick Room this turn to set up the speed a little bit more in Inash's favor.
Yeah, that's something that he needs to come back, of course, getting the knockout very, very nice there. But the main problem he has now is he's only got these last two remaining. He does have decent pressure on the Crocodile if he can maybe score a critical hit on Woodhammer to ignore those drops from Lunge, to ignore this drop from Intimidate. So he's really fishing for the win here, but Marowak's in a really bad position, and I don't think that was the Pokemon he needed as his fourth. It's not going to be able to do much at all to Crocodile. It's not going to be able to do much at all to Porygon, of course, limited to likely Flare Blitz, which is going to slowly whittle himself down.
Yeah, and it certainly didn't appreciate the Intimidate from that Crocodile either. I think if Inash is going to turn this game around, he's going to need a little bit of luck in the form of critical hits, and maybe a little bit of luck just in terms of being able to play, maybe hoping that Carson misplays. We see the Trevenant and the Crocodile protect this turn. Marowak using Swords Dance to counter the Intimidate from that Crocodile, boosting its attack 2 stages, but Porygon 2 reversing the Trick Room.
Very smart play. Carson, knowing that probably Trevenant's going to protect, doesn't go for the Ice Beam to try and knock it out. That would have been really obvious, but he wouldn't have got Trick Room turned around. One of the best counters to Trick Room in the past has always been just reversing the Trick Room. Not the most efficient, pretty hard to do, but he found an opening to do it there, and he's forced Enosh into this horrendously awkward position, even though he got that really big boost on Marowak that might make it a big enough threat.
Alright, we see a Groundium Z move on that Crocodile, so I think I know which Pokemon's about to be targeted.
Yeah, there's a really big tectonic rage coming out here. Carson keeping that one in the pocket. He hasn't been able to use it at all in these games, and even though Marowak has protected, he may be able to get a knockout through it. Whatever it does, it's going to be taking a significant amount of damage. Not a knockout, but a good 40%, and through a protect, that's really important.
Yeah, Porygon 2 with the Ice Beam into the Trevenant. Unfortunately, it failed the attempt at protecting twice in a row. So it is just this lone Marowak against the world. Very well played by Inash and Carson, but unless that Marowak is going to do something that surprises us all, it looks like Carson is pretty secure in his win, using a crunch from that Crocodile for the knockout onto Marowak.
Yeah.
Very well played to both these trainers.
Yeah, that Marowak might have stood a chance, of course. If the Trick Room had stayed up for Enosh, then he would have been able to capitalize the following turn, but beautiful play from Carson to